We have another great program for the Women's Summit, Summer Summits. Today, we want to welcome Kevin Boston Hill. Hello, Kevin. How are you doing?
I am doing just great. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for that music at the beginning. It helps to really energize everyone.
Well, we're really looking forward to hearing about simplifying your message. You know, a lot of people in this room will be knocking doors, writing postcards, talking to people. So this is really important.
Yeah, great. It definitely, when you talk about simplifying your message, it's about delivery, because you already have the message it composed itself as far as the words. Now it's about the delivery, and even in a way, the type of words that you're going to choose. So it's about delivery and really knowing your audience.
I am going to kick it over to my friend Krista Jones, and she will introduce Kevin, and we will get this party started. Thanks, Krista.
No problem. Thank you, Catherine. So good morning, everybody. And it really gives me such great pleasure to introduce my friend, Kevin Boston Hill. So I met Kevin a long time ago through some mutual friends. And, you know, really what struck me most about him was his confidence, his delivery, his presence, but also his commitment to giving back to the community. And so much so that there's just the work that he's done in public speaking over the years. I've really admired it. And so much so that I'll be giving a TEDx speech in the fall. And Kevin was one of the first people I reached out to just kind of get some feedback on how I present the speech. And like I said, so I followed his career. And what I think is so amazing about him is that he is really more than just a public speaking coach. So I'm someone who is passionate about leadership, getting things done, and impact. And through my work, I've really learned that you have to learn how to deliver your message. Creating your message is one thing, but you've got to deliver it as well. And Kevin really is the perfect person today to present on this topic. He has many accolades. He is president and CEO of KBH Speech Education Consulting, which is a full service public speaking and leadership training coaching company. And he's also a John C. Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach, and is also a radio host. So without further ado, I am so excited to hear from my friend, Kevin Boston Hill.
Wow, Krista, thank you for that glowing introduction. I had to turn around for a second and say, who is she speaking about? It didn't sound like me for a moment, but thank you for that. And thank you all. Thank you, Robin, Stair, and Catherine, for inviting me to produce and to deliver this particular workshop for all of you today. It'll be my pleasure to do so. Before I actually do get started, and I do have to say that being from New York, that's where I hail from at the moment, it's always gives me a pleasure when I'm able to get down south. So I do enjoy the Virginia area, the Virginia Beach area. It's been a while since I've been there, but I do enjoy it. My family is actually from North Carolina, so a stone's throw away. And I often frequent the Maryland and DC area. So I'm in the area, so to speak. And so I definitely have some affinities towards the Virginia area. But before we actually do get started in simplifying your message, because as Krista mentioned, it's really about your delivery, because you've already spent the time doing the research and putting the composing the message and putting it all together and wordsmithing it and all of that. And that's great. That's 90% of the battle. Now it's how are you going to actually deliver it? How are you going to get that point across, regardless of the audience that you're going to be in front of, whether it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 1,000. You should be able to adapt your message so that everyone gets something out of it. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today. But a couple of things I want you all to remember or to do. To help prepare yourselves, make sure you have plenty of paper and something to write with, because you'll definitely want to take notes. And there'll be a couple of activities that you're going to come up with that you're going to be doing as well. So I want you to be prepared for that. At some point as well, we'll give you time for this, but at some point I'm going to ask you to also pull up your favorite poem or song, the lyrics of your favorite song. Start thinking about it now. And then when you have the time, when I give you the time, you'll be able to go ahead and Google it and pull that up as well, because I think it'll be a very nice and interesting activity for you all to do a little bit later on this morning. But before we get started, and we're going to go ahead and kick things off right now, I want to find out from you all really quickly. What are, and you can utilize the chat for this area, but what are some of the apprehensions that you may have when it comes to that speaking to people face to face? What gets you, what happens to you? What do you feel when you get that notice that you have to go out and speak to people? And what are some of the apprehensions? We're not going to call them fears. We're going to call them apprehensions. Okay. I see letting the emotions take control, having the ability to get past initial resistance. They would judge you as a collective. Okay. You won't be able to deliver what they want. All right. Your mind goes blank. That happens to a lot of us. The argument thing, okay, getting into an argument, getting nervous, that's going to happen. And we're going to talk about a lot of these things as we go. So I don't want you to think about these particular issues and try to get hung up on them, because these are natural. These are all natural feelings, natural emotions that we all have when it comes to speaking. Even those of us who do this professionally, even your Broadway actors, they all get nervous before they come out and actually perform. So these are all very expected things to have happen. And you'll notice I call this an apprehension as opposed to a fear. When you go on to Google or something like that and find, okay, what are the top fears that people have? It'll often come up that the fear of public speaking is right up there among the top 3. Well, that's a misnomer. And because a fear is something that is really deep-seated, really something that's almost psychological. And we don't really have a fear. See, a fear is something that you have to go through, kind of almost go through therapy to overcome. And you have to really get down into the causes and the reasons and all of that. Well, it's not that serious, let me tell you. So it's more of an apprehension, because public speaking is a skill. Just like if any of you have ever played an instrument, or if you've played a sport or anything like that, there's a skill that's involved. And what happens, the more you do it, the better you get. Same thing with speaking. The more you do it, the more opportunities that you have to actually go through the process, and the more that you perform, the better you get at it. So it's not really, again, in that sense, it's not a fear in that sense. It's really more of that apprehension, because there are different reasons why you feel that you may not perform well. But once you actually start practicing and rehearsing and all of that, you start to get better, and it becomes old hat to you. So you don't have anything to worry about from that regard. But we're going to go ahead and get things started. Thank you for all of you who are continuing to put in your responses to that initial question. But now I want to get right into why we're here. And of course, it's simplifying your message. And to kick things off, I always like to begin to really get everyone engaged with a quick video to kind of demonstrate what we're going to be talking about.
You and I are not very different from this flower. Just like this flower is unique, you are unique. All of us has something special that makes us as beautiful. Do you know what makes you special? Now the answer to that can be a little difficult to find, because sometimes life has a cruel way of picking out your petals, breaking you in two, and throwing you into the trash. And when you're broken, it's very difficult to feel special. Mr. Contest Chair, my fellow flowers, I can remember the first time I broke. I was 17 years old. I had already flunked high school and managed to get myself arrested. Now, I wasn't afraid of the cops, but there was one person I was very afraid of, and that was my mama. Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama. I can hear her scream outside the police station. Even the cops were afraid. She came up to me, held the iron bars, looked into my eyes, and I saw a tear coming down her face. Now, I've seen my mama cry before, but mothers cry 3 types of tears. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, and tears of shame. And when a son sees a mother cry tears of shame, that's a life-changing moment. She looked at me and said, "Son, I want you to be a better man." That night, when I drove home, my dad was waiting for me at home. Now, my dad is a cool dad. Raise your hand if you have a cool dad. Put them all together, you get my dad. My dad came up to me and said, "Son, it's okay. You flunked your exams. You already got arrested. That's fine. You get that from your mother's side. I want you to start working immediately." And I said, "Okay." So my dad took me to meet one of his friends called Sam. Now, Sam was an accountant who had an accounting firm and had generously decided to make me his personal assistant. And there he was. He looked like a teddy bear. But this man was special. I looked at him and he looked at me. And then he said the most amazing thing. He said, "Son, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. If you decide to work with me, I can help you find that something." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the first time in my whole life somebody has ever told they see something in me." And I started working for Sam. And every day after work, he used to tell me stories about the world, about history, about culture, about philosophy. And it was much more interesting than what I learned in school. And I discovered I can dream. And I started dreaming, ladies and gentlemen. After 1 year, I went back into high school, completed my exams, and went into college. After successfully completing college, I found a great girl, but not a job. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Have you ever had that problem? And when you're lost, it's difficult to feel special. So I went back to my cool dad. And I said, "Dad, I feel lost." He said, "You are like your mother." So my dad introduced me to this strange club that had a strange name, with strange people talking. On the first meeting, they told me to do something called a table topic. I aced it. But while I was speaking, I see a strange man seated in the back row. Humble, simple. The unfailing quality of kindness in his eyes. As soon as I finished, he walked up to me, looked me dead straight in the eye, and said, "Son, I see something in you. But I don't know what it is. If you come here twice a month, maybe we can find that something." And ladies and gentlemen, I discovered I could speak, and I love speaking. And that led me to become a teacher. I know what it's like to not have enough money in your bank account. I know what it's like to worry when the bills start coming in. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up my beautiful wife and I ask her, honey, why did you marry me? She says, I saw something in you. But I still don't know what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife. I was broken, and I've been broken, lost, and broke many times in my life. But the people in my life were able to reach into the trash can and make me whole again. If it was up to me, I would have never been able to do that. And this is why if you have great people in your life, no matter how broke, how lost, or how broken you become, they can piece you back together. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at you, I see something in you. But I don't know what it is. Over to you.
Okay, so I like that, using that particular example for a number of reasons. One, because I just think it was a great speech. Two, because it takes you through a lot of different aspects that we're going to really discuss today. And three, it just is inspirational. So what I want to find out from you now is, again, you can utilize the chat, or you can even use the raised hand feature in the reactions button. And if you want to respond verbally, what do you think made this a good speech, or what made it good to you? Okay, use of humor, timing, engaging, the body language, of course, the way he uses props. Yep, good. The repetition, personalize it. Storytelling, exactly, good. Modulated voice, excellent. You all relatable. You all coming up with some really good examples here. The rose matches out. Of course, you had to coordinate, right? Coordinate there. Okay, so let's take a look at what really made this a good speech. And a lot of you hit on a lot of the different areas and the topics in here. So one was that attention grabber. So how do you get your audience's attention right at the beginning? And some people, it might be the use of their voice. It might be a particular statistic that you want to throw out there that's going to be shocking and eye-catching. In this case, he used a rose. It was very simple. He came out very quiet. So it was the silence also that grabbed your attention, because now you're thinking, what's going to happen now? What's going on? What's he about to do? And then he pulls out this rose and then just starts picking it apart. So something that you want to use to grab your audience's attention right from the get-go. That's one aspect of what made this a good speech. As most of you pointed out, those visuals. And when you say visuals, it's not just the physical visuals. It's also the picture that he paints in your head of how he's going throughout his entire talk. Remember when he was talking about his mother coming to see him in the police station? You actually saw the police station. He's actually held the bars. You showed him holding the bars. So you got to paint a picture in your head of what he was actually talking about. He brought you into his world. So when we talk about using visuals, remember, your job is to paint that picture for the people that you're speaking with, if you want them to be able to understand exactly where you're coming from. Think about when you were children and you were in school and you were listening, the teacher called you to the rug for story time and she's reading the story. As she's going through the words, and what is it that gets you to really be more engaged? You start creating a picture of what's happening in your mind. And therefore, and when the teacher is going through her different inflections and gesticulations and body movements and so forth, the story becomes more alive because she's making it come alive for you. And that's what you have to do as a speaker as well. You need to figure out what words are you going to use? What body language are you going to use in order to make this come alive for your audience? Many of you pointed out the humor. Now, when we say humor, we don't necessarily mean telling jokes. If you're not a joke teller, if you're not a funny person, you can stay away from the humor, because that can also add to your anxiety of speaking, especially when you try to tell a joke and it falls flat. Then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Well, so if you're not a naturally funny person, you can stay away from that. Most people, myself included, I try to use maybe one-liners. I like to say I go to the Arnold Schwarzenegger School of Humor because I just use these one-liners and I throw them in there every so often. And that's one thing that you can do as well. So think about the humor and think about why humor is so good. Well, when you think about your favorite comedians, they don't tell like a string of knock-knock jokes. They take you through this entire trip and journey of their story. Your better comedians are great storytellers above anything else. So they carry you through this story, and then towards the end, they throw in the zinger that captures you. So when it comes to humor, it's not about joke telling per se. It's about using the situation. What is it about that situation that you can exploit that can be relatable to your audience? Eye contact is vital. You have to make sure that you are at least looking in the direction of your audience. Now, most people, well, not most, but a lot of people, this is what really causes their agita when it comes to speaking. They're not used to, or they're not comfortable with looking at people in the eye. And that's understandable. So what you can do, therefore, a couple of tricks here, and there's a couple of things you can jot down at this point. A couple of tricks that I try to tell people when it comes to eye contact. Look in the general direction of your audience, especially if you have a large audience. You can just look in the general direction of them. Think about the last concert you went to. When you're sitting wherever you're sitting in the audience, you might be up in the upper bleachers, but you just swear that the lead singer is singing directly to you, right? They're looking right at you and they're singing to you only, right? I can almost guarantee you that singer has no clue where you are. They can't see anything because, for one thing, the audience is blacked out and they got this bright light shining in their face. So they can't see anything, but they're looking in the general direction. And because of that, you think that they're singing directly to you, they're speaking directly to you. So same thing holds clear when you are speaking to an audience. If you look in their general direction, I'll usually say, pick a point that is just above the head of the people in the audience. And then you pick that spot in your, on the wall, whether you're in a classroom or in an auditorium. Just pick a spot just above their heads. Most people aren't going to know the difference because of the distance away they're not going to be able to tell that you're not looking directly in their face, in their eye. So looking in that general direction will help. And then as you get more comfortable with the speech, you get into the flow of the entire performance, your gaze starts to drop. And now you're looking at people directly in their face, in their eye, and you're not holding it. You're not going to stay there for long. You're really just kind of looking at it for a beat. And then you're going to move on to the next person. You hold it for a beat, and you move on to the next person. So you're not staring at them. You're not giving them the 1,000-yard stare like you're a sniper or something. That would be a little creepy. So you just want to hold the contact just long enough to let people know that you're paying attention to them, just like you want them to pay attention to you. A little bit of a tease. And what I mean by the tease is, think about the TV shows that you watch. Normally, when you have a TV show, there's a little bit of a preview of what's going to happen, then it cuts to commercial, and then you get into the introduction. So that's what the tease is. You give a little bit of a preview of what it is that you're going to talk about, then you stop, and then you go into your general introduction. So you want to give people just a little taste of what your entire presentation is about before you actually get into the normal flow of things. And so that's what this particular speaker did. He used a tease. He got into the speech a little bit with the attention grabber and so forth. Then he paused, gave his introduction, and then continued on. So that's another tactic or technique that you can utilize. As most of you put it in your comments, he had that audience engagement. And how do you develop engagement? Well, you develop it a number of ways. And one of the ways that he developed his engagement was by asking questions, right? Asking those rhetorical questions. Just raise your hand if you have an emotional mom, raise your hand if you have emotional dad, and so forth. And by pointing out into the audience to get them involved. Of course, the humor helped as well, but you want to do those things that are going to keep the audience involved. And especially, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but especially if you're doing virtual talks, like we're doing right now, you want to come up with different things that are going to keep your audience engaged and focused on you, because they can be doing a lot of things. And many of you right now are probably multitasking with different tabs and things that are open on your computers, and checking emails, and maybe even doing some online shopping or whatever it is that's going on is going to happen. So we have to figure out, how can you keep the audience, at least the majority of their attention, focused on you. So that's part of the engagement. Repetition was utilized. What was the recurring phrase that the speaker used in his speech? Yep. Okay. And this phrase is going to stay with you all for the next few days. I can guarantee it. If I come back to you 3 weeks from now, I'm going to ask you, what was the phrase? If many of you are going to still remember it, because of the repetition, right? I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. So and again, it's not just the repetition aspect of it, but it's also the emphasis that was placed on the words. See, remember, we hear a lot that is not just what you say, but how you say it. So repetition falls into that as well. It's not just saying the words multiple times, it's also how those words are said. Again, think about your favorite songs. Even though it goes into that familiar refrain each time throughout the entire song, that refrain is sung slightly differently each time. And we're going to get into that, discover that a little bit later as well. Use of pause. Pause and silence can be your most powerful weapon when it comes to speaking. We tend to believe that we have to fill every second with some type of utterance, some type of word or verbal a message there. And it's not true. Sometimes your most powerful piece will be when you actually stop talking. Because now you allow your audience to catch up with you. You allow them to digest the information that you have just given them. Because if you're constantly speaking and going and going and going and just throwing out information and throwing out, it may be great information, but guarantee you they're going to miss some of it because they're focusing on what you just said as opposed to what is going to be coming up. So you want to pause. Give them that time to mentally process what you have said. And then you move on. And it also is good for just for that emotional engagement from the audience as well. And as well to get them to focus back on you. Because as you keep talking and you get into this pattern, your audience is going to sense that pattern. And then they're going to say, okay, you're going to be talking here, so I can go and do this. And as long as I hear that noise, I know that you're continuing to go on. I know where to jump back into when I'm ready to rejoin the talk. Well, if you pause, it throws things off. So now when people are doing those other things, they sense, okay, wait a second, something is different here. What just happened? And that snaps them back into attention because something has changed in the environment. It's something that happens just unconsciously, but they recognize the change in the environment. So you do want to utilize pause as often as you can. And then the simple language. I always tell my students that is no sense in using a $25 word when a $2 word will do. This is not the time for you to use your SAT words, right? Or the word of the day calendars and things like that. Just keep the language simple because, again, you don't know who's in your audience. You don't know the different educational levels of the people in your audience. So you may end up throwing out some language, some words that will go right over their heads. So you want to try to keep the language simple because then that keeps your message simple. And then that keeps you on track. Because when you have complex language and complex messages, you're busy thinking about, okay, I have to say this exact. And now you lose all those other aspects. You lose the eye contact because you're so focused on trying to say the exact language that you had. You lose the humor because you're trying to remember exactly what you wanted to say. You lose all of those other aspects of engagement because you're so worried about getting the words and the phrasing just right. You keep the language simple. Makes it easier for you to remember what it is you want to say. And then you can just go ahead and say and deliver that particular message. So keep the language simple and everyone else will be able to understand you a lot easier and maintain that understanding even when you're gone. Okay, so these are some of the things that made the speech good, at least that made this particular speech good. A couple of other tips that you want to think about are, again, the easy to remember message. Because as I said, that's a message that if I come back to you a month from now, you're still going to remember it because it's very easy to remember. I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. And because it was repeated several times, it's going to stick with you in your head. Okay, a couple of additional things. You want to know your audience. Okay. Know who it is that you're going to be speaking in front of. Find out ahead of time who is going to be in that audience, what the demographics are. If you're going door to door, you know that in a particular neighborhood, who's likely to open up that door on the other side. If you're speaking to in an auditorium, you want to try to find out ahead of time what is the general makeup of the people in the audience. whether it's social economic makeup, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity, whatever. You want to get as much of that information ahead of time so you'll know how to adapt your talk. You're not necessarily, if you're talking to a college campus, the way that you speak to that audience of college students is going to be different if it's predominantly male versus predominantly female, and vice versa. And the different references that you're going to use are going to be different. So you want to know the audience that you're speaking to. You can deliver the same message, no matter across the board, no matter what the audience is, but how you deliver it. And again, your reference points that you use are going to be a little different based on the makeup of the audience. So it's vital that you know the audience or who's going to be in your audience before you even get up in front of them. And that you'll get from the organizers, you'll get from the people who have asked you to come and speak and so forth. Use structure. And this addresses, I know that somebody had put in the chat, losing your place or forgetting what you're going to say. Well, when you use structure, you're going to keep yourself in line. And then you just kind of build on those ideas. So you develop an outline for yourself. Again, you've already done the hard work. You've already done the research. You've already done the actual writing of the text. Now it's, how am I going to outline this? And that's what you're going to follow when you actually do your presentation, when you actually get up in front of people. It's the outline that you're following, not the entire text or the manuscript that you have in your head. Follow your outline, because that will also help keep you on task, keep you focused. And you want to build that outline accordingly. Think about it and it's okay to actually have a little note card with you with that outline so that you can keep yourself on task, because that's what really PowerPoint is really for, right? PowerPoint is just to give you an outline of the talk that you're going to do, is not to capture your entire manuscript. And you notice that when people put too much text on a slide, it starts to tune people out. And then what do? They end up reading directly from the slides and everything. So you don't want to do that. And that's what you really want to just use in outline form, just bullets for here and there to develop. And that way you can actually build on the ideas. Plus, by just using the outline, you can then adapt your speech on the fly, because there may be something that happens right there that you want to talk about, that you want to address. And you can slide that into your presentation, into your talk, without anything seeming seamless. That way you can just keep the flow going and you're being more relatable, being more relevant to the actual time. Many of you pointed this out as well. Have a story to tell. And when we talk about a story, we don't necessarily mean once upon a time and they all live happily ever after type of story. But you want to have a clear path of that you're taking your people on. Think of yourself as the bus driver, as the tour guide, because now you're in control and you get to tell where we're going on this journey. So when you have that story to tell, when you're able to use your own personal examples, that's what helps draw people in. And we like to hear stories. Again, going back to when we were in elementary school, and even as we get older, when we went to visit our grandparents and so forth, we like to hear stories. We like to be taken on a journey. We like to be able to draw and develop these mental pictures of things that are happening. So always have a story to tell to be a lot more engaging. Be relatable. So again, thinking about your audience, you don't want to come there thinking that, okay, I have this doctorate in these 3 areas. Well, in the audience, they may not care. Then you may have an audience of regular blue collar workers who don't care about your educational levels. So you want to be able to adjust to that and adapt to the audience that you're speaking with. That's why I also say keep your language simple. People will know your credentials, and that's fine. They can always read about that. But you want to be able to be the scene that you are one of them. And so you want to be relatable. So you may even use a little self-deprecating humor. You may want to use, again, those personal examples of yourself so that you cut yourself down so that you don't seem so erudite to people. And I apologize for using the SAT word there, but you want to make sure that you are somewhat relatable to your audience. And then involving their senses. People will remember more based on the number of senses that you engage. Right? There's really no percentage that you can put on things. Although I'm sure if you go look it up, you Google it right now, it would tell you that people remember 90% of things that they are told and all of that. Well, there's really no way to quantify it directly, but it is true that the more senses you can engage, the more people will remember. So if you do things that are visual, if you do things that are auditory, you do things that are tactile, the more senses you can get people to utilize, the more that they will actually remember. And so that's why you want to try to use visuals. You want to try to use the inflections in your voice, taking people on that roller coaster ride. You want to use, if you can, passing things out and having people do things so that, again, they're engaging as many of their senses as possible. If it was possible, if we could have scratch and sniff screens, we would have you do that so you can engage the olfactory nerves as well. So you want to engage as many of those senses as possible so that people will remember as much as possible about your message. So when you go door to door, obviously they'll see you, and then it's about what you do with them. It's about your movements and how they actually copy those movements. Quick story, or quick example. I don't know how many of you may have seen the remake of the Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith. But there was the scene when they went up into the mountains and the one martial artist was out on the ledge with the snake. And so when they saw them kind of copying each other's movements and so forth. So when they, at the end of the day, as they're coming back, Jaden Smith's character asked, well, what was that one lady doing with the snake? She was copying the movement of the snake. And Jackie's character said, no, it was the snake who was copying her. So when you get into your talks, and especially when there's one-on-one, you develop this kind of dance. So when you start to make certain movements, your audience starts to make those same movements, and vice versa. So that's how you want to when you know that you're really in sync with your audience, when you can make a movement and then they make a movement very similar to it, almost like a mirror image. And if you think about it, when you get into conversations, those one-on-one talks with people, you notice that you do that. If you see somebody scratch their nose, what do subconsciously? You kind of scratch your nose too. When people sneeze or they hiccup or they cough, what do? You kind of cough as well, almost like a psychosomatic movement. When people when you hear a phone go off in the room, what happens? You check your phone even though nothing has happened with you. So those are the type of reactions that we mirror, that we mimic in others. So you want to try to get in sync with that other person. And that comes with your body movements, your body language, your vocal inflections and things. Again, how you involve all of their senses. I'm going to pause here very quickly and see if there are any other specific questions that anybody may have, again, regarding the particular video that we just saw, or any of your other apprehensions that you may have developed when it comes to speaking. So if you want to pop something in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand using the raise hand feature. Yes, we're going to get to the Zoom meetings, the virtual sessions in a little while. Yes, we're going to talk about that. I see that. Okay. Okay. So now this is the audience participation portion of today's program. Why do we speak? Why do we speak? Well, you want to figure out why is it that you actually want to get up in front of people. It's not just to deliver the particular message that you have written out. Anybody can do that. You have to have a reason, like finding your why. Why is it that you actually want to speak? So there are a few reasons why people do it. One is to feel alive. Right. So do you speak because you are alive, or do you speak to come alive? So do you use that speaking to raise your energy levels, or to share your energy levels? That's one reason why people do it. Taking action. Some people speak because they want to be able to take some kind of action. They like to be in control of a situation. So again, that's where you are the bus driver, that tour guide. You're the one who's going to dictate exactly where we go and what we're going to learn on this particular day. Or do you speak because you like to cash in on dividends? And not necessarily the monetary dividends, but it's what do you get out of it? What is it? Some meaning that you have developed? Is it the challenge that's being faced, or is there just some kind of personal growth that you experience? So what are those dividends that you get from the speaking that you're going to be doing? So you want to think about this. Do you speak because you want to feel alive, because you're taking action, or because you want to cash in on some type of dividend? So these are the things you want to think about before you even begin the research. Why is it that you're going to be going out there? Because there may be some other ways to transmit that information as opposed to you going out there and speaking directly. Okay, so let's talk about what brings you to life. We're going to address each one of these separately. So what brings you to life? Is it, and these things I want you to actually write down, because as we go through these, I want you to choose which ones of these items will actually bring you to life. So on the piece of paper one sheet of paper that you may have, I want you to just write down what brings you to life. And then as we go through these particular items, I want you to jot down the one or ones that actually bring you to life, that actually enable you to experience that energy. So is it the audience itself? So when you actually get in front of an audience, you actually share the energy with the audience. I know when I'm speaking, I actually do better when I have a large audience as opposed to a small one, because I feed off of the energy in the entire room. And I'm able to do a lot more and to be more entertaining and just to be more outgoing when it comes to that. As the audience gets smaller and smaller and smaller, is not so much. That's just with me. Other people are just the opposite. So is it the audience itself that brings you to life? Is it your organization and preparation? How you organize things, how you get everything together, the rehearsals, the research that you do. Do you find enjoyment in doing that aspect of it? being impromptu, doing things kind of right off the cuff. And as moments come up that you adapt to, is that something that kind of brings you to life? When you're able to, like as we say, go off script somewhat. And in some cases, it's not always a great thing to go off script, as we have seen in several situations. But with some people, that's what makes the speaking that much more enjoyable for them, when they're able to go off script. Is it how you interact with the audience? Does that help to bring you to life? Is it about the dialogue that you have with them, the give and take that you may have with your audience? Is that something that's going to help you? Are you somebody who likes to use humor, right? So it frees you up, so you don't feel as stiff when you're delivering a particular talk and delivering a message. Are props what you need to bring you to life, to actually make you feel alive? So that, again, it's not just you up there, but now you have something else, some other point of focus for your audience from time to time. You don't want to use props all the time, but from time to time, it's a good thing to break up all of the monotony of things. Do you have a passion for the subject? And is that what it is that really brings you to? You want other people to share in your passion, and that's going to come out through your delivery and how you get into it, and your facial expressions and your body movements and things. So is your passion for the subject something that really wants you to get out there and get your motor running? Or is it your creativity? So that it's addressing that inner artist in you, so that you're able to utilize your particular abilities and skills to be able to bring that particular topic on subject to life. So you see these 8 items here. I want you to go through these and figure out which one is the most important thing that brings you to life. And then also rank them. So come up with another 3 or 4 after the most important one. Write down another 3 or 4 that would be right behind that. So what are the things that really bring you to life? I'll give you a couple of moments to jot that down. Okay. We're going to get into the changing their minds. That's really part of the interaction with your audience, but that's going to really come up in part of one of the other aspects as well. Because it's the changing of the mind is really when you start to make things personal, and you're really taking charge of the situation. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Paula. And Melanie, thank you for sharing. But I want you to write this down for yourself right now. You don't necessarily have to write this into the chat, but I want you to write it down for yourself on your paper, because these are the notes that you're going to take away with you, and you're going to review each time you're about to get yourself ready to give a talk or to go out and to deliver some type of message. I want you to develop, so you're going to be developing these particular strategies for you to ask yourself these questions before you even go out there. Because again, it's about discovering your why. Why are we actually going out there to do this? Okay. So next, what actions actually turn you on? So again, how do you take charge? What do you like to do to take charge of things? Again, making your talk personal. Is that how you take charge of the situation? By, again, putting yourself into the actual message that you're delivering. How do you, again, making yourself relatable to the audience that you're speaking to? taking it to the big picture, right? So you have the small entryway that you're using, but then you also bring it out to the larger picture. What is it that we're actually going to be developing? Where are we heading to? We always start out small. We start out with just what you are doing and what the individual should care about. And then we gradually open that up so they can see what their impact and how their individual impact relates to the general population and how they're going to be involved in that. So you always want to also show the big picture with the smaller involvement as well. Do you like to find new perspectives? So when you go out and have these conversations, even though you may be thinking about trying to convince somebody else of something, do you still like to hear what are the other sides of things? What are the other perspectives that are out there? It may not necessarily change your mind, and that's not what you want to do, but you still want to know what else is out there so that you can now address that the next time you go out, or even right there on the spot. Remember the impromptu nature of things. You may want to be able to find out what other perspectives or outlooks that exist out there so you can address those as well. Do you like to find solutions? Right, so you want to be able to help people get to that particular end game. So what is the end game you're trying to get to? And so if you like finding solutions, then that's what's going to get you to go out there. And that's what's going to help you develop that rapport with other people, and which may also get you to change their minds, because now you're not just presenting the problem, but you're also trying to find a way to work together to develop a solution. People know what the problems are. They want to hear, how do we fix this? How do we change this? And that's what where you want to go. Again, so you like to identify change. So again, that may be coming from finding the new perspectives and getting other people on board with things. So the more information that you're able to gather, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to find those areas where you can make particular change happen. Do you like beginnings and endings? All right, so do you like sending out or starting out with how to grab their attention, whether it's some type of attention grabber, whether using some type of statistic or something, and then finishing up strong. So you like to you thrive on the freshness of ideas, and then you get that satisfaction when you're able to bring it on home and get that ending and really nail it, right? That mic drop moment that you may have. Do you like to give and take? Do you like to have that audience participation and you feel that much more engaged, that much more alive yourself when you are able to give and take with your audience? You have that Q&A with the audience and that banter with your audience and have those simple conversations. Or do you like challenging your audience? And some people do. Some people like providing them with particular questions and ways for them to start to challenge their thinking. And this may help to help change their minds. So you coming up with all of the particular answers to their questions and then providing them with questions as well. So it's not just answering the questions, but also asking questions. The more you get people to think, the more likely it is that you're going to get them to relate to you and to be able and almost change their minds. So again, take a look at these 8 items, these 8 actions, and rank them and prioritize them. Which of these 8 is most important to you? And then what's second most important? What's third most important? What's fourth most important? So just jot that down on your paper as well, so that you're going to have your own little notebook of of strategies that you're going to utilize to carry yourself forward. And again, if anybody would like to share theirs, you can feel free to pop that into the chat as well. Well, when it comes to the thinking aspect, you want to, there's a fine line there as far as how much or how little you want them to think. It all depends on, again, that goes back to your why. Why are we delivering this particular talk? Why am I coming forward with you to deliver this message personally? The subject matter will determine how much thinking you want them to do. And the purpose, the overall purpose of the talk will determine how much thinking you want them to do. So if it's something where you want to challenge the audience, where you have that, again, that give and take, where you're asking questions just like they're asking questions, then, you may want them to think a little bit more. But if it's something where you're just doing a kind of a hit and miss, hit and run type of talk, then obviously you don't want them to think as much. So you're going to deliver a lot more information to make things a lot easier for them to kind of, you're guiding them down a particular path. And so the less thinking that they have to do, the more likely they will be to follow you, because you're really just dragging them along with you, and you're making that journey that much easier for them. So it depends on what your overall purpose of the conversation is, what of the talk is, how much thinking that people are actually going to be expected to do. Let's see. I think the info. Yeah, good point, Catherine. Thank you. Okay, good. Alice, excellent. Okay, and then the third thing is, what dividends do you want? What do you want? What do you, as the speaker, want to take away from that engagement? Because obviously, what you want your audience to take away. Now, what is it that you want to get out of this? Because don't think that you're just coming up there to deliver everything to them. There has to be something in it for you as well. Right? It's your, I like to call it everybody's favorite radio station, WII-FM, right? On your local dial. What's in it for me? So you have to think about what's in it for you as well, and not just delivering the information to everyone else. So what is it that you want to get out of it? Do you like to master new information and show that you've mastered it? This is the intrinsic part of it. Are you into it for the money and fame? Now, of course, politically, there may not be as so much money involved, or there may be. But also it's about the fame. Do you want to be known in your professional field? Do you want acknowledgement and appreciation? So do you really need to hear those words? A lot of people go out there and speak just because they like the feedback that the audience gives them when they're clapping for them and they're hooting and hollering. That's what they go for. Is nothing else. They just want to hear that adulation. And if you think about the entertainers, a lot of entertainers say that they do it because they get addicted to the entertaining. They get addicted to that adulation that comes back. It's almost like a drug, because it makes them feel so good that they go out there and do it more and more and more. And that, of course, in some cases, it leads to a downfall and so forth. But those are things that it's a real thing that you want to go out there just for the accolades, for that acknowledgement. Do you want to see your own speaking growth? Remember, I said at the very beginning, public speaking is a skill. The more you do it, the better you get, because you're going to pick up different things here and there. You're going to see your growth. You're going to see how you develop. You're going to see the things that you need to work on. And you'll begin to work on those things. You're going to observe other people speaking and what they do, and you'll be able to pick up some things from them. While everybody has their own speaking style, that style is it's Frankenstein, meaning you pull from other people that you've seen. Some of you, from watching that first video at the beginning, some of you are going to pick some things from that performance that you're going to incorporate into your own style. Some of you are going to, when you see other people talk, when I'm sure when you see other politicians talk, and you see that how the audience responds to them, you're going to pick from their style and add it to your own as well. So that speaking styles are almost like fingerprints, because while there may be some similarities, no two people have the exact same style, because you're going to draw from different types of people. So you may want to see your own growth. So as you speak, you want to see how you're progressing. So I encourage you, as often as you can, record yourself speaking, and then replay it and watch yourself. That's the hard part. The easy part is the recording of it. The hard part is watching yourself. And because there is no harsher critic than yourself. So when you start watching it, really get yourself into an objective space. That's the only way it's going to work. If you are too critical, if you're overly critical, it's not going to work out for you. You're just going to add to the anxiety and the apprehension. So you have to be in a real objective space mentally when you are watching yourself on video and playing it back, or even audio. Even if you just record the audio and listen to your voice to see how your voice inflections are changing and so forth, you want to be able to listen to that. But again, you want to be in that objective space so that you can clearly see and hear the areas of improvement or areas of growth that you need to make. Do you like to see change? And again, it goes back to the other aspect, the other section that we talked about, and that as far as wanting change, wanting people to change. Do you like to see that change actually happen? So after you've developed and delivered your presentation and delivered your speech, when you see people go and sign up for things, is that what you really want to get out of it? So, and that's what happens. Some people, they go out and talk just so they can see how many people are going to take charge and take action based on their prompting of that action. Do you like making a difference? And of course, that's why all of you are here, right? That's why you get into politics in the first place, because you want to make some type of difference in your neighborhood, in your community. So that's one thing that probably most of you will probably put that very high on your list of what are those dividends that you want to get out of this. Are you looking for that inner growth? So again, it's separate from your speaking growth, your inner growth. So when you start to learn more things and learn things about yourself, do you find that you get that out of the speaking that you do? Do you like taking challenges and adventures and risks, right? So you want to be able to, people speak because they like the challenge of being able to convince other people. They like the adventure of going out there and speaking in front of different crowds all the time. They like the taking those risks, right? Sometimes you want to take a risk. You want to take a chance on a particular style that you're going to experiment with and see how that works out for you. So is it a challenge, adventure, and risk that's involved? And acceptance and belonging. Again, do you have that need to feel accepted by your audience? Do you want to have that inclusion? That's a little different from the acknowledgement and appreciation. The acknowledgement and appreciation is, yeah, thank you for coming. It's been great, so forth. Acceptance and belonging, they've made you one of them. So is that important to you? And for some people, it is. Like think about high school, think about middle school. It's very important for people to feel accepted, to have that sense of belonging in particular groups or cliques. So for some people, it is important. So take a few moments now to prioritize this. What is the most important thing to you when it comes to what you want to get out of any interaction that you have? And then rank that again. Most important, second most important, third, and fourth. Catherine and Melissa, thank you for pointing that out in the chat. I see about the and the ums. Yes, people use a lot of different fillers and a lot of those different hiccups, I like to call them. Don't worry about that so much. That's part of our natural speech. And it happens because we tend to feel that we have to fill every moment with some type of utterance. We get nervous when it comes to that pausing. So if there's silence, we get a little nervous. I tell people all the time, the only time that silence is bad is on the radio, when you have that dead air. Because you're losing money and sponsorships and all that kind of thing. But when just normal speaking, silence is fine. Pausing is fine. You don't need to have some type of utterance or noise every single second that you're out there. And again, the pause can be used as an emphasis feature. So but as you practice, and this is why you practice, this is why you rehearse, this is why you go through those things. As you do that more, you'll notice that the fillers, those ums, the uhs, the likes, the you knows, all those things will start to fall by the wayside because you don't need them anymore. You're confident now in how you deliver and how you put things out there. Okay. Just going through the chat here again to see the comments that people are putting in. Excellent. Yes, Krista, excellent. Good point. Depending on what your purpose is, that's what's going to change your entire delivery. And it can be the same talk, but if your purpose for that talk changes, depending on the audience, your delivery is also going to change. So it'll change your delivery changes based on your purpose and it changes based on your audience. So you want to keep those things in mind as you are putting everything together. Who's that? Katie, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Katie or Kathy, I'm sorry. Kathy Hoekstra, you're absolutely right. Silence when it comes to the virtual space can be a little difficult but this is where, again, you are utilizing your whole body as well. And we're going to get into that shortly. But it's not just using your voice, you're also using the visual aspect as well. So we're going to get into that in a moment. Okay, so again, let's put it all together. I think I've already asked you to prioritize each category. And so you find out from your aliveness? What is it that turns you on? What excites you? Where that juice flows from? The actions. What do you do best? What are your strengths? And then the dividends, which are the rewards that are most meaningful to you. So that's what you should have this now. So this is your personal blueprint. And again, each of you will be a little bit different, but your personal blueprint that you can now utilize going forward, no matter what environment you're in, no matter what talk you're about to prepare for. So just make sure you have prioritized each one of those categories. And of course, these slides will be made available to you later on if you didn't capture everything together, but so don't worry too much about that. So now that you have your blueprint, we want to get into, again, how you use your body as the instrument of the delivery of your message. Again, your message has been written. You've had sessions on how to develop your message. Now we're talking about how you deliver it. And the delivery comes from your physicalness, your voice, your body, and so forth. And I like to call your voices your instrument, because just like playing that instrument, you have to warm it up first before you get out there and start playing. I used to play saxophone. So before I would get out there and start playing saxophone, whether in the concert band or in the jazz band or marching band, I had to warm up the instrument first. You warm up the saxophone, you warm up your voice, you warm up those vocal patterns, those vocal cords. Because if you just start talking, and especially if you're going to be talking for a long time, you're going to strain yourself. Just like asking your runner. And I'm sure some of you out there probably do some running, whether it's marathons or so forth. You have to get yourself warmed up. You warm yourself up even before you stretch. You warm up with light running, with light jogging or quick walking or something, just to get the blood flowing and to get the muscles loose. Then you go into your stretching. Then you go into your longer distance run. So you have to do those things. Otherwise, that's when you risk pulling something. Same thing with your voice. If you know that you're going to be talking for a long time, you want to warm up those vocal cords. You want to make sure that you have something available, like water or some warm water or something, like a room temperature water, to help to soothe the vocal cords in your throat. So how do we utilize our voice? You think about volume. You want to change the volume, whether you speak loudly or speak softly. And that's going to also help with the engagement. Because when you start to change the different ways, change the volume of your speech, you're going to get people to really be involved with you. You want to change your pitch. Like that's the tones and the inflections that you're changing. Again, that the sing-songy aspect of speaking. You want to change your rate of speed. So you don't want to always speak at the same pace throughout. You want to change that sometime. Think back to the speaker that we had, where there were certain parts where he sped up his entire language, his entire speech process, just to show emphasis. So you want to change your rate of speed. If you're really trying to show or talk about a very serious point, then you slow your speech down. You slow your speed down. If you're trying to show excitement, obviously you're going to speed up. So those are different ways to do that as well. We talked about ad infinitum, we talked about pausing. So use that as your instrument as well, using pause. It also helps to rest your vocal cords for a while so that you're not talking the entire time. And all this adds to or leads to your vocal variety. It's that that roller coaster ride that you want to provide your audience. So that you may start off kind of building that anticipation. So you may talk a little bit slower, kind of like that roller coaster. When it goes up that first hill, it's going kind of slow as you start to get to the top. And you may want to do that to build the anticipation. And then that first dip is going really, really fast. So that you may want to speed up your speech as well to give that sense of excitement. And as you're going, you may want to slow down and speed up and keep changing your vocal patterns as you go. That's that variety, so that you don't sound monotonous. And it doesn't sound, so remember, when it's monotonous, what happens? Just like an EKG or ECG. What does that mean? It's flatlined, right? So the person's dead. And so you don't want to sound like that, because then your audience will tune out, especially when you're in a situation like this. When people can be multitasking, if you're monotonous, they're going to be off doing 5, 6 other things. So you want to keep that vocal variety going, and you do the things that you can. I tell you, whenever I do a talk, when I do my lessons, my classes, and I have to do them virtually like this, at the end, I am exhausted. And I'm more tired when I do my talks on video, virtually, than I am in person, because of the energy, because of the movements and everything that you have to really put into it to keep everybody's attention. When you're in person, you don't have to do it as much, but because the distractions are limited. When you're virtual like this, distractions are all over the place. And that's what you're competing with. You can't even see the distractions, but that's what you're competing with. And so you have to be a lot more physical and a lot more with that. Watch your pronunciations. We tend to fall back or get lazy with our pronunciations as well as our articulation. The pronunciation is how we actually say the words, and how the words, or how they should be said, how many syllables there actually are in the words. And then the articulation is how we say them, the laziness we get when, instead of saying have to, we may say have to. So when you want to make sure that you are articulating the same way that you are, and pronunciating your words, or pronouncing your words, there's no pronunciation, pronouncing your words, you want to make sure that that's correct, because that may also be a turnoff. And that also leads to what improper pronunciation and improper articulation leads to confusion. And the last thing you want to do is have anybody confused by your message. So be careful of how you pronounce and how you articulate. And sometimes it may mean being or exaggerating those facial expressions. I don't know if any of you have noticed that's what I was doing when I was saying those words. When you pronounce and articulate, you may need to overly exaggerate your facial expressions. Again, Broadway actors do it all the time. Opera singers do it all the time. They exaggerate their facial expressions to make sure that what they are saying is clear and it gets out there. What is wrong with y'all? Well, you know what? It depends on your audience. You want to make sure that you are reflective of your audience and relatable to your audience. So in some cases, those drawls may be necessary, and to show that you are one of them. Those colloquialisms may be necessary to show that you are part of them, that you're being relatable. So it's okay to throw them in every once in a while, but you definitely want to be careful of, by and large, you want to be careful of the pronunciations and articulations. Dialects, again, it's those regionalisms, basically. because I'm sure that a lot of people will be able to tell what part of the country you're from based on the dialects that you're using. And we can always tell you Southerners when you start talking. Okay, so here's the practice part. And this is where you're going to be able to get to really explore your vocal range. So, as I mentioned before, you should have a favorite poem or song in your head. And I want you to go ahead and look it up. So, if you have it handy, if you have a book next to you that you can pull it out, or if you need to Google it, go ahead and do that. But just pick a poem or a song that requires some type of emphasis and feeling. Then, as you practice, I want you to read through it several times. You can keep yourselves on mute because you're going to read through it aloud, and so that you can hear yourself. But each time you read through, and you have to read through if it's a particularly long song or something, just read through maybe the refrain or just the first couple of stanzas. You don't have to go through the entire thing, but read it through a couple of times, and each read, change your tone, rate, or pitch, and see what the difference is and how it's received, how it hits your ear each time you read it. So I'll give you a couple of moments to look up your poems and to do that. Okay. So hopefully you were able to run through a couple of times. So did anyone notice a difference in as far as what combination of tone, rate, or pitch made the words come to life for you a little bit more? Anyone like to share? You can raise your hand. Who's that? Let me see. All right, Melissa.
Hi. This has been wonderful to begin with, so thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. I chose Love Me When I'm Gone by Three Doors Down, and the first time I went through it, it was, you know, kind of a love song type thing, because, you know, think about me if I'm not there with you. But then the next couple of readings, I started associating it with what my personal experience has been with a family member lost that I associate this song with. And so that completely changed the reading that I had. Then it became more of a soft and tender, you know, thing to this particular person. So I could see why you could have the same words, the same message, but depending on even, like you said, what your audience is or what is driving you to share the message, it could totally change your delivery.
Exactly. Exactly. And thank you for sharing that with us. And that's exactly the point. So you can use the same message, the same words, but because of the audience, and when we say audience, is not just the people in front of you, it's also who you have imagined in your head. Because when it comes to the virtual screen and the virtual audience, you're not necessarily going to see that audience. So you almost have to imagine the person in front of you that you are speaking with. And this is actually a technique also that we use a lot in voiceover, and that you want to imagine the person that you are speaking with, because they're not there. When you're in that voiceover booth, it's just you and the copy. And so you have to create your audience. And so when you think about who it is you're speaking to, and it will definitely change the meaning of the words that are in front of you. Then they're not just words. It actually becomes a message at that point. Catherine?
Yeah, I chose Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, and I practice what I think is my weakness, which is pausing and, you know, just really feeling it. So the first time going through, and I think when you practice it, then you practice, you start to see the power where you can put that emphasis on, and taking that time to sort of really, you know, study on those words and start to really pay attention to that. So that really helped me when you talked about, you know, those techniques. So that was good.
Good, thank you. And you're right. The more when you practice it this way, you definitely want to focus in on what it is that you're looking to change. And that's why a lot of times as well, it's good to practice it in different ways, and also record it and then listen back, because it's kind of hard unless you're really skilled at it or practiced at it. It's kind of hard to pick up the different changes and inflections and things as you're saying it. You kind of have to listen back to it in order to get it. So you would want to record yourself and then listen back to it as you go. I saw Susan. I would like to hear what makes it your song?
I just love the beautiful words to it. It's about how much we love our country and about how much people who live in other countries love their country, and how we should wish peace for them and peace for us. It's beautiful to me.
Okay. No, that's great. That's great. And that's what I mean when I saw the emphasis you put there. It says my song. That's what helps you with that passion, when you can recognize something in there that you really love about it. And then now you want to show that to everyone else. You want to relate that passion to everyone else. And I can hear that passion in your voice as well as you were describing it. But that's something for you to pick out as you are going through this particular activity as well. Great. Do we have anyone else who would like to share before we move on? Okay. Get back to this. Okay, so now let's talk about your body. We talked about your voice and how you use your voice in changing and relating your message. Well, now you want to use your body, because your body becomes very important, especially when you're in front of people, because that's what people are looking at. That's the visualness. If you don't have a PowerPoint slide. And if you're going door to door, obviously you're not going to, because who's going to actually walk with a laptop or something to show that? But so your visualness is you. It's your body. So how do you use your body to relay or to help relay your message? Well, one obviously is your personal appearance. Right? It should go without saying, but if I'm mentioning it, there's a reason why. So you want to make sure that your outward appearance reflects the message that you are actually going to be delivering. If you're delivering a message on saving the seals or saving the whales, you're probably not going to come out in your worst attire. You're not going to come out in your evening wear or something like that. You want to dress the part. You want to make sure that you look professional, not overly doing it, and of course not being slovenly appearance as well. You want to look professional. You want to be careful also of the jewelry that you wear, because you want to make sure that this is not going to be distracting. So just a simple watch, a ring, or something like that, studs as opposed to hoop earrings, because you don't want them to be distracting. So your personal appearance is very important. You want to think about your movements. Again, your body movements help to demonstrate your level of passion and how you want to draw other people into what you're talking about. It also helps to paint the picture for your audience. So the more movement that you do, more purposeful movement that you do, and there's a distinction there, but the more purposeful movement that you do, the clearer that picture becomes for the audience, because they're going to be able to draw that or paint that mental picture for themselves. And I say purposeful movement. A lot of times we do movements. One thing, when we speak, everybody uses their hands anyway. We use our bodies when we talk anyway. But when you use certain gestures repetitively and there's really no reason for it, then it becomes a distraction. So you want to try to make sure that each of your movements has a purpose to it. Think about your politicians. Other politicians, when they're speaking, their hand gestures, their hand movements, they're very cut and dry, very straightforward. They don't use anything extraneously because they don't want it to be a distraction from the words that they're speaking. So you want to utilize those movements so that at least the ones that people can see, so that they go with your words. They emphasize the words as opposed to taking back or distracting from them. Your gestures, hand gestures, facial expressions, everything, again, it should go in line, in concert with what it is that you're talking about. Also, think about movement. Movement helps with your nervousness. People move back and forth on the stage, not necessarily pacing, but they move from point to point on the stage because it helps to alleviate a lot of that nervous energy. If you stand in one spot, and I've seen this way too many times, if you stand in one spot and you're nervous, what's going to happen? Well, think about a volcano. When the pressure starts to build in the volcano, where is that? At some point, what's going to happen? That pressure is going to find a point to get out, to escape out from. It may escape out through the top. It may burst out from the sides, whatever the weakest point is. Well, same thing with your body. When you're nervous, that nervous energy is going to find a way to get out. And if you're standing in one spot, there's no place for it to go. There's no way for you to dissipate that energy. So what happens? That's when you start shaking. And now if you're standing there, you start shaking, your hands are shaking. And if you're holding paper, it becomes even more obvious that your hands are shaking. So you want to move around so you convert that, or you dissipate that nervous energy, and it gets out in a more natural, productive way, as opposed to you standing in one spot. Also, when you stand in one spot, you tend to lock your knees. And when you do that, the flow of blood doesn't flow as efficiently as it should. And so when you lock your knees in place, that blood flow doesn't get all the way up to your brain. And when that happens, coupled with the nervousness and everything, people pass out. And I've seen it happen a few times, more than a few times, where you're in the middle of your talk and then you see the progression that they start to slide and then they just topple over because they had those knees locked in place. So the more movement you do, the blood is flowing naturally, is flowing efficiently, and that is getting through the brain, you're getting oxygen, and now you're good. So if you can, try not to just stand in one, you're not a tree, right? So you don't need to be rooted in any one spot. So keep moving around and utilize your gestures efficiently. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. Your mouth, and that will happen as far as the mouth getting dry. That can definitely happen. So you want to stay hydrated. So that's a tip. That's something to do well before you actually get out to speak. You want to keep your body hydrated so that it won't get so dry. A trick that I used to use just before you speak is you eat a green apple, right? And it doesn't have to be the whole apple. Just get a piece of a green apple, because the green apple, the Granny Smith apples, those are the ones that will actually produce more fluid in your mouth because of the sourness of it. So just take a bite or two of a green apple before you go out there and speak, and you should be okay. But that's also why people keep that bottle or a cup of water next to them as well, to take a swig every so often. Okay. Yeah, taking that deep breath before, again, that's part of the warming up aspect of getting the warming up of the vocal cords. You want to take those deep breaths. You want to just go ahead and let all that, again, get all that out, shake everything out and everything. So you're really using that body. So you shake your body out so you get all that nervousness out. You may even want to wring your hands and massage your hands a little bit, move your shoulders around. So it's almost like you're doing calisthenics, but that helps to get the nervous energy out and get that blood flowing and everything. And then eye contact. We spoke about eye contact a little bit earlier, and I gave you some tips and tricks on what you can do with that, because you don't want to necessarily look directly at people, because as uncomfortable as it may be for you to do that, it's uncomfortable for them as well. So you don't want to maintain that gaze for too long. You look at them for a beat and you move on to the next person and move on to the next person. Don't make it so robotic though, but you do want to move around and kind of bounce back and forth among the audience members and so forth. Pick different spots. And if it's just one-on-one, pick different points of their body to look at. You may want to look at their forehead first. Then you may want to look at the chin. You may want to look at a shoulder or something, so that you're looking in their direction, but you're not staring in their eyes to make them feel uncomfortable or make you uncomfortable. So at least if you're in their general direction, they'll still feel that your attention is on them. And that's what you wanted to get to. I'm looking at one. Karen's comment caught my eye because I'm actually the director of forensics at one of the schools that I work at. So, and I was on the forensics team myself. So it's I don't think I'll be suggesting that to my my team members, however, but I can understand where you're coming from with that. Okay. So now let's say you have your Q&A sessions. And this is something I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, but because I want to spend a little bit more time on the last aspect of today's talk, which will be on the virtual talk. But your Q&A sessions, if at all possible, prepare possible questions ahead of time, things that you think people are going to ask, so that you can anticipate those responses. Or if you can, even better, if you can get questions sent to you ahead of time so that you can prepare your answers for them. And so that will help with the impromptu nature or the extemporaneous nature of that particular session, of those Q&A sessions. You want to be as prepared as possible. Listen. It's vital that you listen to the question that's being asked, to the actual question that's being asked, not the one that you heard, right? Listen to the question that's being asked. So you don't anticipate the question. You're listening to exactly what's being asked of you, so you can respond directly to that question. There'll plenty of times people they think they know what's going to be asked, so they start formulating a response ahead of time before the question is even finished being asked. And so what happens, they end up responding to a completely different question. So you want to listen to that to the question, because I think it was Stephen Covey who actually said, we tend to listen to respond than listen to understand. So that's why, we want to make sure we're listening to understand rather than responding. It's almost like that, like double dutch. We tend to, when the ropes are spinning, we're looking for our entry point. We do the same thing in conversation. We tend to just look for our entry point to just throw in our response, as opposed to really listening to the conversation that's unfolding. So listen to the actual question that's being asked. Be honest with your responses. And this is, again, it should go without saying, but if I'm mentioning it, there's a reason why. So you want to be honest with your responses. If there's something that you do not know, then you say, I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can, or something to that effect. Don't try to make anything up. And you definitely don't want to sound ingenuous. You want to be as honest as you possibly can, because that's your integrity. Without integrity, you're not going to be able to convince people to change their minds. You're not going to get people to follow you, to make any changes in the environment or in their thinking processes or anything like that. You're not going to get them to follow your message if your integrity has been shot. So you definitely want to be honest, and then stay on track. Once you finish answering the question, stop. Don't add any more information if you don't need to. Answer the question exactly as it was asked, provide just that much information, and then move on to the next thing. Be very succinct. It's almost as if you are answering questions based on sound bites. You want to be very succinct, very clear with your answers, so that you're not going off on tangents and bringing in other things that may end up getting you in trouble. So answer the question as asked, be very succinct, move on. If you need to, keep a little index card. One thing that I do with a lot of sessions I go to, I'll keep a little 3x5 index card with me and just kind of jot down a couple of points that I want to make sure that I raise. And then I'll even glance at it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't think that you have to be expected to remember and memorize everything. Don't do that. You'll drive yourself crazy. If you have a couple of index cards with you, pull them out. This is information you've already researched and you've come up with already anyway. So pull them out, recite them what's up here, and then move on. That'll help keep you on track so that you're not trying to grasp at straws and just pulling stuff out of the air. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So now, the moment that you've been waiting for. when you're talking virtually, as we're doing now, and you know that there are plenty of distractions that can happen, but the way that you help with that is, one, knowing your technology. Know what platform you're actually utilizing. If you're on Zoom, know Zoom backwards and forwards, so you'll know how to share a screen, how to share different aspects of the things that you want to get to, how to mute people, how to mute yourself, you want to know how to do all those things. Tell people or direct people where they can find the raise hand feature so they can do that. You want to know every aspect of your technology, because each one is a little bit different. Zoom is different from Google Meets, which is different from Microsoft Teams, which is different from whatever the other ones are. So you want to know the technology platform that you're using ahead of time so that you're not fumbling around looking for the different things that you need to get to, different tools that are available. Just looking at I saw a couple of comments pop up in here for a second. Okay, I'll get to those. You want to also control your visual environment. So, and it's not necessarily having some great virtual background in your screen. I know a lot of you like to use virtual backgrounds and things to kind of hide what's going on in your household, and that's fine. But again, if you're going to do that, if you're using virtual backgrounds, I always recommend that you have an actual green screen that you have in your house if you're going to do that, because even if your computer does have the processing power to provide that virtual background, it creates a halo effect if you don't have an actual green screen. So when you move around, you can see the different, you can see the actual image behind you, and it looks like you have this little movement going on with you, or sometimes you even disappear into your background depending on what you're wearing. So if you have an actual green screen, it solidifies the background so it actually looks more real than having anything else. And also make sure you have good lighting. Many people tend to create an environment where they're sitting in the dark. It's almost like they are in witness protection and you just see this black dot up there. They're in a shadow. So you want to make sure you have good lighting, and so that the light is facing you as opposed to being behind you. Again, just like when you're taking a picture, what do photographers always tell you? They tell you to face, they want the subject to face the light, because when they take the picture, if you point your camera into the light, it washes everything out. So if you have the light behind you, the light is shining into your camera. So it's going to wash you out. So you definitely want to have the light in front of you or behind the camera when you're on camera and taking pictures. So that's what you control, that environment. And then this is where you also adapt your nonverbal communication, right? You want to make sure that you're more animated when you're online. And you also want to think about your eye contact, your eye placement. Don't look at the boxes of people, because when you do that, now you're not looking at the person. Look into the camera itself, as I'm doing now, as I've been doing. You want to look into the camera, because now it looks like I'm looking at you, each of you individually, so that when you're looking up, you see me looking directly at you, not looking into the actual boxes of people you see there. It's tough to do that. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually have on a different screen, I'll move that box away so that it's not even in my line of sight. So then I'm not tempted to bring my eyes down to look at that. Now I can only look into the camera. So that's something that you want to think about as well. Remember, speaking is about connection and how you make that connection. And when you do that through even through a virtual setting, that eye contact, you're looking into the camera. Just like on TV or in the movies, that fourth wall, when actors break that fourth wall and they look directly into the camera and you say, oh, making that eye contact, that's what you're doing now. Look directly into the camera. And now on each of the screens, now each of you, it looks like is as if I'm looking directly at you. And that's what you want. That's the effect that you want to generate. And then, of course, you adjust your pacing. So you want to include different things that your audience is going to be doing. So we had different activities. I even paused at certain points to allow you time to go do those activities. In different situations, I may set up breakout rooms, or there may be some other things that are going on just to keep the flow going. Because you may get tired of hearing my voice for 2 hours. And that's understandable. That's okay. I'm not going to be offended by that, although I think I have a great sounding voice. But that's the whole other story. But still, you may get bored with hearing that person's voice for an hour and a half or 2 hours or so, just lecturing. So you break things up. You have the different activities for people to do, to bounce in and out. You have the different breakout rooms. So again, to bounce in and out, to respond to each other. You have the Q&A sessions where people can come in and respond as well. So you do different things. You're, again, adjusting the pacing. You have pauses. You maybe even incorporate a couple of breaks. I didn't do that today, but because I felt we could just go through. But you want to plan this out based on the level of engagement that you're looking to have. Remember, there are plenty of distractions. Again, they are going to have multiple tabs open. They will be multitasking. There's no way around. You can't prevent that. All you can do is try to minimize the effects it has on you. So those are some of the things that you want to do. Yeah, it depends on the audience as far as the breakout rooms, and not just the audience, but it also depends on your purpose. Again, you don't use breakout rooms just for the sake of breakout or using breakouts. You want to have a purpose. You want there to be some clear instructions that the people are going to do when they get to those breakout rooms. Then you want to pop into those rooms as well to check on their progress and to answer any particular questions that they may have. So you give them, the breakout rooms are really just an opportunity for your audience members to get to know each other a little bit, or other people within the speaking environment, the audience themselves, as well as to work on a particular activity that you're giving them, give them a little bit more deeper understanding of the topic. But you definitely want to pop in and check on them as they're working on those things as well. And is just like having if you are in person and you break people up into different groups, as the facilitator, you want to bounce around to each group. Same thing in breakout rooms. It's just the same mentality. You want to bounce around to each of the breakout rooms to see how people are doing, to check on their progress and so forth. I noticed as far as the lighting, you have to play with that. Some people use the ring lighting. Some people I have just a regular a flat light that I utilize. Some people use a lamp that they may just set up a little bit to spotlight themselves. You kind of have to play around with that, and also play around with the room that you're in, because if you have an overhead light, that may have an impact. If you're in a room that has a large window, that may have an impact. So you kind of want to just play around with that a little bit ahead of time, so you get to see what works best for you. And I'm just trying to see some of the other comments here. Yeah, Catherine, I like your response. I love it with all the video filters. Yeah, it makes me look a lot better than I do in person. You're absolutely right. Okay. So any questions?
Any tips on attire for virtual?
On attire, you think about attire for virtual as if you were being in person. So you want to use the same type of attire. Again, it's about professionalism. And so how do you make yourself look professional? Again, I could have just as easily put on a polo shirt to come and do this, but again, I wanted to project a particular image of professionalism. So shirt and tie and a vest, and that's fine. So again, the same way that you would do this if you were to be in person, you want to do it on being virtual. That's fine. One other thing about the cameras as well. You see the spacing. You want to see how you fit into the actual frame, or the framing, I should say. You want to see how you fit into the frame. So there's not a whole lot of space between my head and the top of the screen. You want to keep it like this, so you keep yourself centered in there. Because if I move this around, but like that, that's no good. So you want to keep it so that you're pretty much centered within the frame itself. And again, you can test that stuff out before you even get on camera, and so forth, so that you can actually see how it looks and how you're going to be projected when you go across. Catherine?
Now, one thing about Zoom that's kind of funny is that how people use their Zoom backgrounds for their personality. You'll see even people on the news, everybody's intrigued by either their house, how their kitchen looks, their living room, or what they're projecting to the audience. This is obviously really thought out. And then what's great about when you don't use your real house is to have the virtual background. So your undressed husband that decides to walk across the room is not into the...
Exactly.
Just recently, we were traveling and I was doing a Zoom thing, and he just got done running. He walks behind my screen. Thank God I had the virtual background up. He had no clue that he could be seen. I'm like, ooh, Zoom bomb. So yeah, I think paying attention to your space is really important. And I always put up signs on my door of my house that tell people so the postman doesn't knock. So weird stuff like that over time. I've learned like tricks in Zoom. And also, well, Robin can tell her own story. When we were really doing a big show, have a backup plan, right, Robin? She lost electricity several times, and now she actually has like a backup generator for her. Yeah.
Yeah, no, when it comes to, again, the virtual space, you do have to think about the technology that you're using and the access, because you want to make sure that you do have power, obviously. You also want to make sure you have a strong Wi-Fi connection. Mm-hmm. That's key, because if you don't, the bandwidth you use for your camera, the camera eats up a lot of bandwidth. And if you don't have a stable connection, that's when you get into the people freezing and so forth. And also remember, this is a thing that not too many companies will tell you, but the bandwidth that you get is not only yours. Even though it's coming into your house, is not only your bandwidth. You're sharing bandwidth with other people in your neighborhood, not just the people in your household. So you'll notice at certain times of day, the speed slows down. That's because everyone in your neighborhood is online at the same time. And there's only a certain amount of bandwidth that has been piped into that particular neighborhood. So everybody's kind of sharing it. So you'll notice that usually between 6 and 10 or 3 and 10 at night, things start to slow down a lot because everybody's at home. And now during the pandemic, that time is like any time of day. when more people are the more people who are on, the slower things get. And that's why you see a lot of the lags, the freezing and so forth. So you want to try to have, like, sometimes I will use my own hotspot so that I'm not even on the network. That way, whatever bandwidth I have is mine and I can stay stable. So those are things you want to think about as well. So there was a question in here is when I move my camera, yes, I have a green screen. I have an actual green screen. So when I move my camera around, everything stayed the same way. That's because of the green screen. And again, so many of you, if I didn't mention this, and I'm pulling the curtain back here, but if I didn't mention it, you probably would have thought that was my library that in my background. But no, that's an actual green screen image. So it keeps everything stable so that it looks real enough, and that people would, because I've gotten a lot of questions on the encyclopedias at the bottom there, and the shark mouth at the floor there as well. Like when did I get those things? And of course I'd usually just play along with it. But when having that green screen, it helps to solidify your background. You can get them pretty cheaply nowadays on Amazon, so that's not a problem. There was another question in there about having time to react. Yes, have a couple of, this is where I want you, again, where I said to try to anticipate questions. Anticipate questions that may be asked in certain environments, or anticipate responses that people may give you in certain environments, and jot those down and keep those on index cards with you, so that when you do have to speak on those things, you have some information that you can talk to. And that'll help you. That'll help keep you focused. And yeah, just pick one or two. And doesn't have to be anything at length. Just pick one or two items to help keep you focused, and to help you to remember what people are going to be talking about. Okay, any other questions? That's all that I have for you right now. I'm sure we could go on and on all day about this, but if you do have any specific questions, definitely let me know, and I will definitely be able to respond to them as best as I can.
I do have one. Melanie had asked several times, and I know as a candidate, we'll be heading down to Virginia Beach. Any last thoughts on when we do speak to people that maybe aren't open to the message? Is there a way to keep the conversation on target? What would your best takeaway from those concerns, or is it a lost conversation at some point?
Well, you want to, again, integrity is everything. And it's not only your integrity, but also the integrity of the message itself. So even if people aren't necessarily listening to or responding to your message, just because they're not listening to it right then and there doesn't mean it's not registering. So you want to stay true to your message regardless, because there's a saying that hear me now, believe me later. So at least you get the information out there to them now, because everybody processes at different speeds. And so they may not even process what was said to them that day. It may not be for another day or two that it actually resonates with them and say, oh, wait a second, where'd this come from? And now it starts to resonate with them, and they start to really think about it. So stay true to your message, stay true to what it is that you want to get out there, and stay true to yourself, because integrity of self and integrity of the message is vital no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's true. So how's everybody feeling?
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. I do struggle with trying to make the eye contact. Okay, so I was trying to play with that a little bit. And also, look, I have my beautiful virtual background here. So everything was really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to writing my speech on Democrats Deliver.
Excellent, excellent. I'm glad that I could help out.
Yeah, okay.
All right, well, thank you. So what we're going to do is everybody, round of applause for Kevin. We're so thankful for your time